Hey, everybody, welcome back to Too Many Men. I am Alison Lucan, and as promised, we are bringing you another emergency pod because we are less than 24 hours post one of, I'm going to say, the most entertaining NHL trade deadlines that we've had in a while. We're going to get right to it. I am thrilled to be joined by my co-hosts, the Athletics' Shayna Goldman and the exuberant and brilliant Sara Civian. Folks, we have no time to waste. We're going to go division by division. And Sara, I know you wanted to start this podcast off in a very specific way. Tell us where you're at.
Boo, 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 boo. I don't know the rest of it, but the Bruins are dead.
When you wrote in the text that's what you're gonna do, I'm like, I feel like I should know what that means. And it didn't click, and the second you started, I'm like, oh,
Okay,
that's the song.
I'm glad you got the reference because I was gonna just put it on my phone, but I have my headphones in. So like I guess I just have to I was gonna say free ball it, freestyle it. Okay, this is where we're at. The Bruins are dead. Brad Marchand is not a Boston Bruin. My brain is on zero.
Do you like their direction though? Do you think this was necessary? Do you think they took it too far? Like where are you at on it?
I think they took it too far trading Brad Marchand. Like, who's going to be leading the direction? Like, who is
What
literally
is the
look at
direction?
me, who is the captain now? They did, they only got a second for him, theoretically, conditionally, but you got to get more than a second for Brad Marchand. Like, what's up with that?
Okay. Because I'm with you. Because I'm like, yes, retool. Yes, you're doing it. But I feel like they got so much back that it's like that could
Yeah.
have been the one chip to be like, no, unless the ask was incredible, right? If you got like two first, like go off. But I was very underwhelmed by that one too.
I agree they did really well, except that. And then the accept that is like the biggest thing ever. So,
Well, in light of the Boston of it all, this is what we've decided to do, my friends. Again, this is going to be a quick episode for you. And we know that there's going to be a lot more discussed because there are trades to be made, and then there are trades that actually pan out and trades that don't. So, what we're going to do today, I think what we've decided is we're going to go division by division, and we're going to talk about our favorite or favorite moves, a couple. And then we're going to talk about the winner and the loser in our minds of each division. And Sara, we're sticking with it. Let's start with the Atlantic, where this is one of the divisions for me that I think we are seeing an arms race, mainly between the Florida teams, Florida and Tampa Bay, just ramping up things. General Manager Ron Francis setting the market price early with first round picks just apparently being candy. But if you look at the Atlantic, Sara, what move popped for you the most after Brad Marchand?
I know, right? That is what I would say. But what move? I kind of like Dylan Cousins to the Senators. I think he is somebody that is young enough and he could really benefit from a change of scenery and turn it around. And the Lord knows they need more scoring.
Do you think that Brady Tkachuk is going to be able to recover emotionally from losing his very bestie on his team?
God, he better because he's next, if not.
There was a great quote, I forget who said it, that came out of the Ottawa room, which is, I like having fun, but winning is more fun than having fun. I'm paraphrasing that. Shayna, what was your favorite move out of the Atlantic?
I like that pick, Sarah, because that's
Thanks,
not the one
Shayna.
like my head originally went to, but I love those the two young guys and it's totally two totally different playing styles, like how to shake out.
Yeah.
Favorite move though, honestly, is Tampa Bay getting Gord and Bjorkstrand for two reasons.
My
One,
heart, my heart.
yes, but listen, the Kraken made out really well,
Oh,
and
it's a wonderful piece of business, no question.
yeah, and I want to see them take that draft capital and do something with it. Like I'm excited. Like here you go, the Pacific could be your oyster. Pop off. I really like the Lightning strategy, and I know I saw some people being like, "Oh my God, their failure! It's going to be spectacular one day." Diners fly forever. If I'm JBB, I'm looking at that going, I'll sit at the bottom of the standings with my three fucking Stanley Cup rings weighing me down and I won't look back. Their core is elite and is playing at that elite level again, which has not been the case the last couple of years because you brought back guys like Ryan McDonough, because Sorelli and Hagel are popping off. they just needed really good players in that middle six. Like, I think it's perfect for them. I think it is exactly what they needed. Yes, they spent a lot, but I think their philosophy is completely right. Like, the whole idea of the uncertainty of the pick maybe panning out into something versus players they know will be good. Like, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I own my bias, but getting an Oliver Bjorkstrand who is so sneaky good in addition to a known quantity of Yanni Gord is an impressive bit of business. And again, I will say, I asked Ron Francis about this yesterday if he thought timing played into it for basically the Kraken set the market. He said he already had a price and got it because that's what Ron Francis is going to say. But um, it was an impressive move for both sides, although we will miss two very excellent Kraken players. All right, so those are our moves of the Atlantic Division. I am going to just say this. I was underwhelmed with Toronto. I don't think they kept pace with the leaders in the division, even though they sit second overall in there right now. Sara, for you, winner and loser in the Atlantic in terms of based on their moves over this trade deadline.
Oh God. Winner Panthers. I think you do exactly what you have to do. I mean, I don't like Seth Jones's contract, but if you're just thinking about they need another defenseman, sure, let's see what happens. If you can, smoke it if you got it, whatever they say. Um, worst. Uh, I I'm gonna say the Red Wings. I'm just like not getting what I need out of them, and we get it. Be patient. I am not getting what I need.
Shayna, winner and loser. Tell us.
Yeah, I'm very torn between the two Florida teams because, like you said, I don't think the Leafs kept pace well enough. And while I think Lawton was the better pick for them versus a Braden Shen, and I think Carlo's pretty much exactly what they needed, I still would have been like, just pay up for Brock Nelson. Like, I think he would have been like the total ace for them, but whatever. I'm really torn. I'm gonna have to go Florida, I think, because they were able to utilize that LTIR space better, so they were able to do a little bit more, and I like what they did. I also really like the idea of Seth Jones there. I think he's gonna completely bounce back outside of Chicago, and he looks a lot different at what is it, like 7.2 million or 7.5 versus 9.5, which he was never going to be worth. And I think the discourse around his game is always very interesting. And I think back to those Columbus days, and it was really fun for me when I wrote my story to dig back and I read your Rover story, and it's linked in there, and a couple others I was reading through to just like get that reminder of like his role there versus what he became in Chicago. So I like what they did. Even the goalie situation, I don't have Vanacek there, but I'm like, okay, like I'm intrigued. So they're my winner. The loser has to be Detroit. I mean, Detroit is out here catching strays when Jake Wallman gets traded for all of the right reasons because they attached a second round pick to get rid of him and did nothing with the cap space they opened up when he imagine him in their top four right now. And I'm like really on the fence of this of like should they have bought because they have one of the toughest schedules ahead and at least go for it even if you fall short. And I'm kind of in that camp right now because yes, they're very flawed, but I think they've had assets forever. They've done this forever. Like, just do something. And I like how you see the Lightning and the Panthers. They're just taking big swings and saying, fuck it. And I want to see Detroit take a swing or two. Feels like they just don't do it enough. And obviously, you watched them lose spectacularly last night, and you're like, yeah, the goaltending's not perfect, but the defense is bad. The forward group, like, they need more. And they take on Peter Mrazek, who has another year of his contract left. Like, where is the plan? I don't think you need to blow up the core, but I just think you need to do something.
There we have it, my friends. That is the Atlantic Division. I'm going to take us now to what, in my opinion, and I'm welcome other opinions, the other most active division, and that was the Central. My goodness gracious. Look at what's happening. I am living for the upcoming Colorado Dallas game regular season, and we need it in the postseason. You have Dallas getting Rantanen in a down to the wire trade, which seemingly, based on reports, because it took so long, handcuffed Carolina from doing much else. You have Colorado ramping up. You have the Jets adding big pieces as well. Sara, for you, first, your favorite move in the Central at the deadline.
I mean, getting Rantanen from another contender, like that's just sometimes you got to keep it simple, and that is far and away the best move. Like, how does Jim Nill do it? I don't know, but I'm here for it.
Jim Nill, hero, friend of the pod, hopefully. Come on now, Jim.
Yeah.
Shayna, you can't pick Rantanen. It's already off the board. What's your favorite move?
I know that's so tough. Okay, my favorite move is actually not a trade. It is the Wyatt Johnston contract
Oh,
extension.
that's
That
solid.
is a
Um,
fantastic deal. He is a star. You look at last year in the playoffs, he was like the scoring chance generator of their dreams. He was everything and more. And I think he's so good. He can play center, he can play wing, he can play anywhere in that lineup they want. I think he's going to be sick alongside Ranson too. I think that's going to be the move instead of Hintz. I like that to start. But to get him at that value now with the rising cap in mind, 10 out of 10, no notes. That is a player that to me is maybe besides Heiskanen the most important piece to the Dallas Stars of the next, 5 years.
Yeah, I love
I
that.
was thinking he was maybe going to go to Carolina, and that would have been really good for the Canes. But the fact that not only did they not have to trade him, but they extended him, it's just like Nilla is running laps around the rest of the league.
I think he's a true untouchable and he should be, right? Because I was
Yeah,
looking at it, I'm like, if you move him, then all of a sudden I'm looking at it going, maybe I do like this better for the Canes.
yeah.
Yeah, and I put it in the chat too. There was that tweet of if you take away the drama, like what was it, two firsts and Stankoven, you're never going to get that for Natchez. Like
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
also, my God, Canadians, can we all please say Natchez properly? I don't know if you guys were watching the was it Sportsnet coverage that what they were like literally within 15 seconds they all said it differently. But anyway, I
Rod
You
digress.
know,
Brindamore's wife used to get really mad at him because he'd call him like neck ass.
well,
And
apparently on the Avs broadcast, they were shitting on, I saw a lot of people shitting on them like a week or two into him being there about how he pronounces his name. And I think it was closer to that. And the broadcaster, I forget which one it was. And sorry, I'm sure they're listening because everyone listens to us, but I cannot remember right now. But he was like, I spoke to him the day he got here and asked him, like, how do you want this pronounced? Because I've heard it different ways. And it's closer to that.
yeah,
Well,
he kind of goes with the flow there, but it's a lot.
I was going to say maybe he's a Marcus Johansson who changes the way his last name is pronounced depending on the season, but who's to say? All right, so
Or like Sherry, right? Remember, he was like, "Oh, it's Sherry." He felt bad and didn't want to correct anyone.
dude, it's your name. Come on. My trick is I always say, what does your mom call you? And then you get to where you need to be. All right, so let's go here now to the central, our winners and our losers. I have the controversial take that while Winnipeg did a lot, I wasn't super impressed. But Sarah, what's your take? Winners and losers in the central.
Yeah, I didn't want the Jets to do too much, honestly. And for Kevin Chevel, take a day off. That was actually pretty good for him. Like, I was expecting him to do absolutely nothing. So I guess, like, he gave us something. I'll take it. But what was the question?
Your
Winners and
winners and
losers.
Okay.
losers.
Well, the Stars have to be the winners, right? Because what did you give up? Obviously, Stankoven's really good, but they have had an embarrassment of riches when it comes to their prospects, their young guys, and their picks. And it's like that's just a masterclass to be able to get what you need to get. And God, I just love everything about it. And the worst, I'm gonna say the Wild needed to be more competitive. Like your team's falling apart, you have a really good chance to actually do something here. Like you should have done more.
Yeah, for sure. This and arguably, particularly with the injuries now to the Wild, right? We're thinking that it's going to be next year for them when they're no longer
Yeah.
strapped by long implications of buyouts. Shayna, who are your winners and losers in the Central?
Okay, just to be different, because
I'm
I am
ready.
torn on my winners, right? I love everything the Avalanche did. Like I think that they were very smart with like listen, they moved on from Ranson and from there it's like, well, what are you gonna do to show that you can compete? Brock Nelson, to me, is one of the best second line centers in the league. And I know he gets a lot of shit because he played on the Islanders. I have watched his entire career very closely. I am such a fan of his game. He was not very good defensively early on. I think Barry Trotz transformed that element of his game. He is like your surprising, unexpected, really good goal scorer that I don't think gets the credit he deserves. I think he is exactly what that team's been missing at 2C. And I like that then they figured out a way because I was wondering, do they acquire a center and move out Middlestat in that, like a 1-2 deal? And it would have made sense for the Islanders to take on Middlestat as a reclamation project, honestly, if they were going to move out Nelson and Pajot, but obviously they only moved one of their Cs, so it's like, okay, you don't need to. But I like that they figured out in a different trade because you could say Middlestat's going to be a 3C and that's fine, but he's played a lot with Colton and Logan O'Connor because they had to move up to the second line earlier this year and they didn't click together. Like it didn't work. So I love that they went for Coyle instead, who I think high price, not the best contract, but I think he's going to be sick there. I like
Yeah.
how they approached the Ryan Lindgren thing, right? I got asked about those Jared Bednar quotes, like, what do you think of his numbers? And it's like, well, we're going to look at them differently and we're going to use them differently and our context is different for it. And I think that's so true. I think he's going to be a good fit there. So you put the whole year together and it's like I'm very impressed at how much turnover there was. My loser,
Yes. She's
I
pausing,
mean, I'm
people.
underwhelmed at Utah and I thought they should have gone for it, but it's Nashville. It is Nashville. I don't think they should have gotten rid of Tommy Novak for someone like Michael Bunting. If you're going to get rid of him, like a Novak for Middlestat trade, I would have been like, okay, I'm interested. Someone younger. I would have traded Ryan O'Reilly for a ton back. I don't understand what they were doing. I just don't think they made the most out of their assets. Moving Shen and Novak together for Bunting when Shen brought back a pretty good return, a team was going to want him. Like, they created a mess of their situation with their big off season and it didn't work out. And now they're just digging their heels in deeper. I don't get it.
That is a very good pick because, again, we want to make
Yeah.
sure that people understand you can be a winner even if you're a seller. It doesn't mean you're necessarily the most poised for a playoff run. But while we thank the Central and the Atlantic for their service, thank you so much because we have two underwhelming divisions left to tackle. And we started in the East, let's go back to the East, and that is the Metro. And I am hard strapped to point to any huge things that I loved or disliked here. I mean, again, Carson Soucy goes to the Rangers and promptly scores a goal, just like we all expected. But, for me, I'm going to say there were a couple tiny moves by Columbus, and I actually like that. I feel like the chemistry of that room with what they've had to go through. I don't know that they're in their true contention window yet, so why screw with it? And your strength is your youth, so don't trade away young pieces. That's kind of my hot take on the Metro. But Sara, there's not a lot to pick from, but is there a move you like in the Metro at this deadline?
Where's Shayna? She's having to be creative, much like Kyle Dubas.
Oh,
And I really liked how he cleaned up at the deadline. I've been thinking about him a lot because Grandma Dubas be tweeting. And I just feel like he inherited such a shit show. And he wants to be, I saw the quote that he wants to retool this. Well, wow, what have you? Jake Gensel's on the screen right now. Okay, focus. I think he said he wants to do a retool where they can be competitive while Crosby's still there. And I think he's headed in that direction with kind of the picks he got. It was a seller's market and he capitalized on that. So is that my favorite? It's one of them. And are we going least favorite yet?
you can go there because do you have one? Again, there weren't that many moves in the Metro of note. Is there one trade that you liked by any of the Metro teams?
One trade that I liked.
There doesn't have to
Name
be.
one trade. Um,
Exactly.
I I guess the easy thing would be to say the Carson Soucy, but I mean, I don't even really love that. That's fine. It is what it is. I don't really I don't love
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so who's your loser of the Metro? Who is there maybe someone who should have done more that did not?
It's a, the Blue Jackets are so tricky. I think standing kind of pat was the right move there. I agree with you on that. Um, I love the Capitals just making little ads, not doing too much, and extending Lindgren. Um, yeah, the Hurricanes should have done more. Obviously, they couldn't because it was a time constraint, which that's bizarre. And they got to look into not having that happen again. But that's what happens when you try to play 5D chess checkers. Like, you got to just keep it simple sometimes. And they thought way too hard about all this.
For sure. And sidebar, I petitioned for more phone lines at Central Registry because the phone queue seemed to take like forever and
Yeah.
a day to get trades actually registered through. Shayna, let's have you attack the Metro. Tell us first, is there any trade that stands out to you here? And then your winner and your loser.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Rancid now from the Canes perspective.
Please.
The takes. Enough. Enough. I think you're right, Sarah. Like the 5D chess and checkers isn't necessary. And part of it is I think you could even look at it and say maybe the Canes front office is too smart for their own good. And not
Yeah.
everybody is going to play this way. And that's why I think it's interesting you see some of the trades earlier this year, like the Rantanen trade in the first place. It is three general managers without a ton of experience. And look at them being the ones to quietly, very quietly and sneakily pull a deal off. So I wonder if you go for it. I like that they took the risk in the first place to bring in Rantanen because he was what they needed on paper. No, he didn't score as much. Yes, he was better below the surface. I think the Four Nations break fucked things up. If I remember correctly, a bunch of the team was sick. It was hard to decide. And I think people forget the human element of it that he might not want to spend his time there or he might not know because he just got thrown to the
Yeah.
wolves. I did see a report. People were asking about whether the Canes were able to talk extension with him or had any indication. And it seems like they did, like he might want to extend there, but they didn't know if it was just leverage to like heat things up from the Av side. So
Yeah.
it's a complicated situation. And I think everyone has to keep that in mind. But I think the point you made, Allison, like they wouldn't have gotten that for Natchez, who they could have sold low on in the offseason and chose not to. I think that was step one. I think two is this is a really good return for they treated it like they bought a rental and they treated it like an extension, a player with an extension that they were moving out, and that got them a much better return. So I think all of that's interesting. I would have liked to see them turn that into something. I'm very surprised they didn't. I
I
really
was
thought we were going to see
begging for a
Yeah.
Besser EP40,
Well,
like
that.
flip
That's
the
that
what
flip
was
the
I
two
was waiting
firsts.
for.
that was in talks.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
the thing is, they really were like my sources were right about these things. I didn't necessarily tweet them. I said them on the live stream because I was like, oh God, I don't really have time to triple check this. So it was one of those things I put in the group chat and I put on the live stream, but I wasn't like tweeting out because I'm traumatized, even though I've never been wrong. But anyway, um,
But it was
I
something all three of us had heard too, right? Or
yeah, yeah.
like this was the Canucks are a different animal. I think people need to keep that in mind too.
Yeah, but they were trying to flip these picks that they got for an active player, but it didn't happen, which is a huge failing.
Yeah. It's it's just so messy and people are like, "Oh, then maybe they should have kept him." Like there's a good case to say keep him as your own rental and go for it this year and see what the fuck happens. But there's also a
Yeah,
case to say they
but
feel their window is bigger than this year.
I
So this is
think
what they're doing.
I think in the last 30 hours of all of it going down, there was no way he was coming back. Like he
Yeah.
refused to talk to the media. He was done and the drama had been dramaing and his last game, you're not playing like that for Rod Brindamore, which that's a whole nother can of worms, but he was actively atrocious. And I know there were things that weren't just about hockey that led to him not wanting to extend the lifestyle in Raleigh with his family. His family has jobs too, and there's things going on with that where they kind of, I think, wanted to be in a bigger city. And hey, I love Raleigh too, but yep, I left the small town vibes as well. So I can't blame you there. And he was forced into this situation blindsided, right? So
Yep.
now, and then Tom Dundon comes in his fucking tracksuit and is like, you better sign an extension or else. I'm like, I'm out. Bye. Like the way they play hardball is not, I, you just wonder at what point is it going to fuck them over? Like with the Rod Brindamore extensions, it almost fucked them over. Right now, they're getting fucked over by the way he operates. And you saw the agents poll from the Athletic where they were all talking about him and talking about things like this. And then this happens. It's like people don't want to work with you. So that's kind of why a situation can end up like this.
It was crazy to see, like, again, having covered a team like Columbus that routinely gets just raked across the coals for no one wants to play there. Like, is Carolina the new, like, they're gonna have to shake that moniker?
Well,
But oh, go
I've
ahead.
heard from some free agents that left. Like, I love it. I love the Caniacs. I love Rod Brindamore. I love everybody there for the most part. But like, I, I think there's some, and it's not because of Raleigh sucks to live in. Like every situation's individual, but I think the hardball they play with these contracts when it comes to free agents that are like a Jake Gensel, it's his first time being truly a free agent. You know what I mean? Like not with the Penguins. It's people that are being traded kind of against their will, and then it's like, oh, they won't sign an extension. Like, yeah, they
The
got a lot
game
to
has
think about.
changed. Yeah, the
Yeah.
game has
Yeah.
changed.
Not to
And
mention, like the salary cap rising.
yeah, listen, a player's going to get what? One true opportunity to cash in free agency. This is it. And then people go, but he didn't do it. Well, maybe Dallas was a better fit. And then everyone's going to be like, well, I don't want to hear about the taxes. Unless you fully understand the situation, please don't speak to me about them ever again.
And
Please.
everybody forgets, I would also like to say, everyone's like, oh, Florida's a no tax state. Do you know what else is a no tax state? Washington. No one ever mentions Seattle. So, like, if you're going to
And they're
say
getting
that's a
taxed on the
thing,
road. That's half the year too.
exactly. Anyway. Okay, Shayna,
Very
you didn't tell
confusing.
us your winner and
Okay.
loser in Metro,
Okay.
if
Well,
there is one.
it's really tough. Okay, I'm gonna go the loser. I'm torn between the Devils and the Islanders because the Devils, the injuries. I get why they didn't buy. I don't love that they spent the way they did for a little piece. Whatever. It's whatever. They're gonna make the playoffs and probably get
Do you
out
think
early because
so?
of all the
Really?
injury.
Do you
Oh,
think they're
that's
I
going to make
did.
it?
brutal.
They
That's
looked
brutal.
terrible
No
last
Jack
game,
Hughes, no Dougie
respectfully.
Hamilton, no Steven
Exactly.
Thaler. That like I don't think they should have done much. So it's like whatever, deal with it and hope for the best next year because the situation sucks. It's terrible luck. I think the true loser, if I'm gonna have to pick one, and I know I'm gonna piss people off and I don't give a shit, is the Islanders. I think they got a great return for Brock Nelson. But they shouldn't have stopped there. Even if they didn't want to move Pajot because he has another year on his deal, right? You could look at it and go, now Barzell can play center if they want him to. You have Horvat, Barzell, and Pajot, and you're settled with that center depth. Fine. Kyle Palmieri should have been traded. I know you don't want to disrupt
Yeah.
the locker room. I know you want to be good soon, but try to get him to come back as a free agent because you can't half commit to this, right? After years of pushing off a retool, you finally are doing it. Do it. Do it. You don't have to go as bare bones as the Bruins did, but do a little bit more, especially when you see these inflated costs. Like he would have gotten a pretty good return. Send him off somewhere, be better for it. And even if you never want to use those draft picks because their drafting and development isn't amazing, trade them for something this summer. Like I just feel like they finally did what they had to do and they just are still like playing it too safe. And I just think safe is death. And that's been their mantra forever is to stand pat. So they're going to be my loser. And if I have to pick a winner, I'm going to go with Washington, but it's not just for both Ilya and hit or miss on. I think that they're very good at spotting reclamation projects. They didn't need to do much. The vibes are great. The team's playing great. Spencer Carberry talked about where he's going to start in the lineup, and he said he's going to play with Duhaime and Dowd to start, and they'll go from there. And he's putting them there specifically because those are two players who communicate a lot when they play and they talk a lot, and he thinks that will help Villiers like learn their systems and integrate into the team quicker, and then they could figure out where he fits. And I'm like, there's just it just feels like that's a team that everyone's bought in, and I'm very interested to see if he can bounce back too.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Preach to all of that.
All right. We have one last division, and this honestly was the most disappointing division to me because to all the points we just talked about, a lot of the Metro teams, there was a case to not make a lot, not a lot, but like Washington, Columbus, a case to not be super, super active, right? And that makes sense to me. But oh, Pacific. Oh, Pacific. And again, owning my homerism, but other than Seattle pulling off, in my opinion, what was that masterful trade for Gordon Bjorkstrand for the two firsts, like, what are we doing here? It was the whole like stick pushes at logo, do something meme. For Vancouver to not do anything with both Besser and Pedersen with the question marks, and then for Alvin to come out and basically tank Besser's value in his
Oh,
post-deadline comments, absolute insanity. This is still a division that has a lot of tight battles for that final wild card spot. And I just didn't see what I expected to see from this group. Vegas trolling everyone with the lowercase hi tweet. Sara, again, there's not a ton to pick from when we look at what happened in the Pacific. Is there any deadline move? And for the sake of the sheer lack of examples, I'll let you include the Lankinen extension. Is there any deadline move that you liked from the Pacific?
I mean, reacquiring Riley Smith, go off, Vegas, whatever you say. Um, I literally cannot pick anything other than that. I don't, I'm pissed off at the Oilers and the Kings. Like, all right, we're just giving up. I tweeted that last night after a few too many goodbye, Brad Marchand, farewell, TheIrs. I was like, how it makes no sense, of course, given the beers, but I was like, how are the Panthers going to trade for Brad Marchand and the Oilers cannot get a fucking goalie? Like, why are you doing that? Are you doing it to be annoying? I feel like Bowman would do that to troll me specifically. Like, why wouldn't you just go get a goalie? Calvin Pickard sucks. Why are you doing this to me? Like, I don't even want you to be good, but like, what's going on? And then the Kings. Hello? Is anybody home? I can't do this.
Shayna, do you have a move you liked out of the Pacific other than, of course, the Bjorkstrand Gore trade?
You know what? I like the Jake Wallman deal a lot. I'm a very big fan of his game, and I think he's very good offensively. And the power play pumps it up a little bit in San Jose, and I think he played really well despite his environment. And there are a couple elements of his game defensively that need some work, and he's not going to have to play number one matchup minutes. So I think he'll be better there. I think the Oilers' blue line is very rigid. Like everyone has their role and they can't mess with that at all, right? Like Darnell Nurse is good because they manage his workload, so they can't mix and match the pairs the way they'd want to. And I feel like Woman's gonna open the door up to it a little bit. And I also look at it like Matthias Ekholm has been fading a little bit the last month. He was not great at Four Nations. Like I'm wondering if at 34 years old, like it's starting to catch up with him maybe. So to have Woman be able to step up into his role over not just this year, but next year as well, I'm like, I'm interested in that. But my hot take, actually, Sarah, I didn't think they should have gotten a goalie. I thought they needed a defenseman and they got a good one. I think they needed one really, really good winger because I look at it and go, if you could limit the damage that Skinner faces and you could outscore your problems, I think they'll be fine because I don't think there was any option outside of Vamelka that would have interested me for them.
Hmm. Spicy.
No John Gibson. I mean, I guess he keeps getting
He
The
injured,
keeps getting
but
injuries.
hurt, yeah.
Yeah. And then
Well,
even
but
like I
also
know
you're
some
letting
like
people like
Binnington.
literally crash into him. Like, let's talk about it. So
That I mean, that's someone they should have traded him a year or two ago, and every day it's like that decision
three
looks
years
worse and worse.
ago, 4 years
Yeah,
ago.
please save him. And now look at him. Like, but I just who would they have got? Like once Vimelka signed that extension, I'm like, I don't see anyone for them to get. And I don't mind Trent Frederick, but I would have still liked one more forward because like I thought Arvidsson would be good there. He isn't. I thought Jeff Skinner was gonna be good there. He isn't.
Yeah.
Okay, do something.
All right. We are all very, very, very disappointed in you, Pacific. I'm not even going to ask you for a winner, Sarah. Of all the losers in the Pacific, who are you most disappointed? I know you mentioned LA and Edmonton already, but you have to pick one. Who's the child you're making sit in the corner?
LA because Oilers are just going to keep winning. That's just kind of the situation. And the Kings, it's like they're not even trying to beat them. At least they didn't trade people. I saw they were going to fucking, wow,
Frank Clark, right? Everyone
oh,
thought he
sorry.
was gonna get moved.
Yeah, why would you do that? At least you didn't do that, but you could have done more.
Shayna, we're not even going to pick a winner in the Pacific. Who are you most
I have
disappointed
one
in?
actually. I do
Okay,
have
go
a
ahead.
winner.
All right, I'm ready.
I'm gonna
We'll
give
allow
it
it.
to the Sharks because I
Okay.
like they
Huh.
leveraged their cap space. They turned Granlund, Cece, and Jake Wallman into two first-round picks. I think the Zetterlund trade was too far. I know it's like who cares, but it's like you need guys to play in the lineup, so you don't want to turn into Chicago. I'm really interested to see those two teams like who's gonna get it together first. My loser is the Canucks in every which
100%.
way. Because, listen, this isn't your year, and I think we all know that at this point. Like, if you make the playoffs, what are you going to do in them? Quinn Hughes isn't 100%. I'm sorry for all the barking if you could hear that, but the dogs have
The
opinions on the
dogs
Canucks.
agree.
They agree, and one of them picked the Canucks to win it all last year, so I think it was Kona.
Oh.
But where was I going to go with that? Oh, yeah, it's just you look at it and you're like, if you're not going to be good this year, even if you make the playoffs, like I think you just need to start preparing for next year. And it's just not working where they're currently at, and they didn't do anything. And I think the Besser thing, like you mentioned it before, Alice, and those comments afterwards, if you're trying to push his value down to play games with his agent, you can try that. But that was not the phrasing. If you want
No.
to say, be like, no one offered close to what we value him at. He's an important winger and anyone will be lucky to have him. You could have gone any direction. That was not it. So I hope you're extending him and you can mend those relationships because if not, that's your best potential trade asset you're just leaving on your roster. Like you started with the JT Miller trade, you needed to and you brought in Marcus Pettersson. You already moved out that first round pick. You need to do something to better your chances for next year. That's what like all of your focus should be. And it just feels like it's gonna be a long time before they're good again at this rate. I just don't. This whole time I wondered if it was Jim Rutherford like pulling the strings more. And after hearing Alvin speak, I'm like, okay, you're both disappointing to me. It's not just one.
All right. Well, there you have it. Our quick emergency pod whip around of the trade deadline. We're not going to spend a ton more time on this right now because whether these moves are good or bad isn't determined today. It's determined in about 20 games from now when we look at who's in the playoffs and who's poised to make the most damage. I do want to give a quick shout out to one of my favorite teams, friends of the pod. And we know you're out there. The Gremlins hockey team here in Seattle. We appreciate y'all. Keep crushing it, keep having fun. And in the meantime, as we follow the teams that are in the NHL and all over the sport, we will be back with you on our regularly scheduled pod time with all the bells and whistles and fun and games. In the meantime, you can follow us on social at 2_much_man on Twitter and Instagram, 2-much-man on the Blue Sky. Our merch is out there. Their delivery is unacceptably slow, and our merch link is broken. So we'll post that in the show notes when we feel that it is responsible to tell you to buy our merch, that you'll get it before the end of the calendar year. But until we talk again, my friends, we ask that you please do something, no matter how big or small, to make sure that hockey is truly for everyone. We will talk to you soon.
Love you.
Bye.